I'd been told that joining the Alliance was the first step to galactic utopia, a chance for humanity to stand shoulder to shoulder with the greatest species the universe had to offer. But the moment I stepped off the shuttle, I felt the weight of 1,000 eyes bearing down on me. Not just eyes, something else too, something lurking just out of sight, slithering behind the smiles and polite greetings. It was an itch I couldn't scratch, a shadow behind every word, every movement. It was only when I saw the way some of them would look past me, like I wasn't even there, that I began to suspect the truth. The infestation wasn't just hidden. It was everywhere, buried so deep that no one dared to question it. It took us too damn long to figure it out. By the time we knew the truth, the benefactors had their hooks sunk into dozens of human worlds, wearing those polished diplomatic grins while our leaders rolled over like trained dogs. I guess that's what happens when you're playing against an opponent who isn't above manipulating the game itself. The parasites, Tyrathel they called themselves, had bonded with the brains of the other species in the Alliance, subtly tugging at thoughts, shaping actions. Not all at once, no, they weren't sloppy. They threaded their control over years, decades, until there was hardly a thought that didn't originate from one of those whispering worms. We humans were the anomaly. For whatever reason, genetics, evolution, sheer damn stubbornness, we were immune. The Tyrathel couldn't latch on to our neurons, couldn't make a connection. We were the one mind they couldn't invade, the one free will they couldn't bend. And when they found out, they tried to keep us distracted, threw us more promises and pretty little lies while they scrambled to figure out a way to fix their human problem. But we were done playing the game by their rules. The resistance began in the dark, whispers in the alleys, data drops in the black markets. It started small, a factory sabotaged, a supply line disrupted. The real turning point came when we learned how to extract information from the parasites themselves. Turns out those Tyrathel didn't just control their hosts. They stored everything they saw, every thought and experience of the host species, all bottled up like vintage wine. If you could peel one off a host and keep it alive long enough, you could bleed it for intel. The tricky part was getting close enough to do that without blowing your cover or getting your throat slit. The first one I pulled off a host was inside a diplomatic envoy, a lanky, frog-faced Thalaxian who'd taken a little too much interest in human affairs. At first, it was just a routine capture. I didn't even know about the Tyrathel then. When I knocked him out, the host's eyes rolled back, and that thing, God, it looked like a twisted nerve cluster wrapped in wet silk, started wriggling its way out of the Thalaxian's skull. I froze for a second, stunned by the grotesque sight of it crawling out as if it knew its cover was blown. I should have killed it right then and there. Instead, I shoved it in a containment jar and watched it squirm. It was in that moment, as the parasite thrashed against the transparent walls of its glass prison, that I realized just how deep this infestation ran. It wasn't just in the halls of power, it was in the minds of every species, woven into the very fabric of their societies. We were surrounded by puppets, their strings pulled by parasites, and I'll admit it, I was afraid, but I was also angry, angrier than I'd ever been, because I'd seen what these things were doing, and I wasn't about to let humanity become just another marionette in the Tyrathel's grotesque puppet show. I kept that first Tyrathel alive long enough to get answers. You wouldn't believe what those damn things could tell you when they felt pain, a lot of things about who they controlled, what their plans were. I don't know if they could really feel fear, but they definitely knew desperation. They squealed secrets that we'd never have found out on our own, intelligence that started turning the tide in our favor. We knew where to hit, who to trust, and who was compromised beyond saving. We turned their own hosts against them, setting off riots and uprisings across a dozen systems. And with each parasite we tore out, we got better at understanding how they operated. We even learned to splice together fragmented memories from the Tyrathel we captured, reconstructing whole pieces of history, conspiracies that spanned eons. Every revelation was a nail in the coffin, not just for the Tyrathel, but for the illusion of the Alliance itself. The galaxy was waking up, and it wasn't pretty, but there were costs. You don't fight a war against creatures that embed themselves in the minds of entire civilizations without sacrifices. We'd pry a parasite off someone's brain only to find there wasn't much left to save, just empty husks where real people used to be. Sometimes the Tyrethel would rip themselves out rather than be captured, taking the host's mind with them. Those were the ones that hit me hardest, the ones where you could see the fear in their eyes in the last few moments before that final, mind-shattering scream. I tried not to think about how many of those faces could have been ours if the Tyrethel had found a way to crack our brains open. I tried not to let it keep me up at night. And then there was Vortex V. We had intel that a major Tyrethel nest was hidden in the catacombs beneath the old processing plants. The resistance hit the place hard, expecting a quick in-and-out raid, but the Tyrethel had fortified their nest like a damn fortress. We ended up trapped underground, cut off from the surface, with 100 hostiles crawling through the shadows. I had a squad with me, 4 humans and a liberated Thalaxian named Rakeel. We were making our way through a narrow tunnel when we got ambushed. Tyrethel-controlled soldiers bearing down on us from all sides. The firefight was brutal, and in the chaos, I saw one of those writhing parasites lash itself to Rakeel's face. I saw the terror in his eyes, the way his limbs went stiff as it tried to force its way in. I didn't hesitate. I ran over and yanked the thing off, throwing it against the wall and blasting it into a sizzling puddle. Rakeel collapsed, gasping, his eyes wide and unfocused. "You saved me," he whispered, voice trembling like a child's. "Yeah, well, couldn't let them win," I grunted, pulling him to his feet. I didn't say what I was really thinking, that I'd seen too many die that way already, that there was no way in hell I was letting another one go, not when we'd come this far, not when we were so damn close to breaking them. We fought our way deeper into the nest, and when we finally found the heart of it, it was like stepping into a nightmare. The Tyrethel hadn't just embedded themselves into the host's minds, they'd rooted themselves into the walls, the machinery, the very bones of the planet. It was a living, breathing infestation, pulsating and thrumming like a grotesque parody of life. But we'd come prepared. With every explosive charge we planted, I felt a grim satisfaction, a kind of justice, or maybe just vengeance. The detonation ripped through the catacombs with a deafening roar, and I felt the shockwave rattle my teeth. As the smoke and dust cleared, I saw the nest collapsing in on itself, and for the first time, I felt something I hadn't in a long while. A flicker of hope. We'd gutted a major stronghold, one of the largest infestations we'd come across. It wasn't just a victory, it was a statement. We weren't just surviving, we were taking the fight to them. But as we crawled our way back to the surface, bloodied and exhausted, I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd only scratched the surface. The Tyrethel were spread across the stars, embedded in the highest echelons of power, lurking in the shadows of worlds we hadn't even touched yet. Each one we tore out would be another small victory in a war that seemed endless. Still, I'd keep fighting, because I'd seen what happened when you let monsters crawl into your mind, and I wasn't about to let them do that to anyone else. Humanity, for all its flaws, still had one thing left to give this galaxy, a reminder that free will doesn't die quietly. We'd take back the stars, one infested world at a time, and we'd make sure the Tyrethel learned one hard truth. Some minds, no matter how hard you try, can never be controlled. And if it took burning half the galaxy to make them understand that, well, that was a price I was willing to pay.